Howdy, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoor Retailer Show whiskey tasting event. Uh, it's virtual reality because we all know reality sucks right now. Hope you're in good health. Hope you're in good spirits. Right now, you're within good spirits, right? We got good spirits here, and hopefully, you got some of this in front so you can taste some of this with me. I'm the founder and now I'm ambassador for TINCUP Whiskey. I've created it. I'm out there. I'm behind it, and man, I wish I was back down in Denver with everybody. We had a hell of a good time last year, and we had a lot of people stop by, and I think it was good. We're proud to be at a mountain whiskey, and we're proud to be associated with people who do stuff outdoors because we think that we kind of symbolize what outdoor and tradition used to be about whiskey and why we put this thing together. So we're here to support you and all the things that you do and support the outdoor life and the people who like to go out and have fun. So that's the bottom line. Now, before I bore you too much to death, we might as well start with the sip because otherwise I'm going to get real boring if we don't taste any. So we'll start with our TINCUP Original. Put a little in the glass, and it doesn't matter what kind of glass you really use. You can use this if you're outdoors and you want to pass around the campfire. Right now, we can't pass around the campfire and have people sip out of everybody out of the same cup, but that was the original intention of the cup. But there are really no rules to whiskey tasting, right? The first rule is there are no rules. So you can have this type of cup, gobbler of some sort. You can have some fancy nosing glasses that concentrate the vapors, and so you can do it about any way you want to do it. What I like to do, and that's what I'm sharing with you, is I like to give it a little nose first. And breathe in, and your nose is going to pre-program your brain about what's going to come to your palate, right? Your nose is going to tell you stuff. It's like, if you smell a hot pepper or a sizzling steak, your brain's going to go, I've kind of tasted this before, and I kind of know what's coming. So when you take a little nose, it gives you an idea of what your palate's going to do. Now, a lot of different ways to do this next part, but the best part of it is drinking. And the first thing I like to do is I like to put it on the tip of my tongue. And I'll hold it there just for a little bit because that part of your tongue has different senses in the back part of your tongue, right? And lets you go, that kind of identifies what your nose was telling you. And then it tells you what your taste buds are telling you. And then the second thing I like to do, which is all good because we're sipping this whiskey, is I like to take the next sip and maybe just a little bit more and let it sit on the back of my tongue. And I hold it back there, and that part of your mouth is going to get a little different sensation than the front of your mouth. And plus, when it goes down your throat, then you're going to get a little more of what the finish of the whiskey is. So no rules about it, and everybody tastes something different when they taste whiskey, right? Some people like Brussels sprouts, and some people like asparagus, right? They're not the same, but people have different taste buds. So one of the things that we start with is, what does whiskey look like? All right, so the color comes from the oak barrel. All distillates, which are rum or vodka or anything distilled, is clear. So whiskey gets all of its color from the oak barrel, okay? Put it in an oak barrel for 4 to 5 years. It's going to absorb, the barrel's going to absorb some of the bad stuff out of the whiskey. It's going to put some good stuff in, but it's going to put 100% of the color. Now, out here in Colorado, I like to think that color looks like a tanned elk skin. But, different people say different things. They can make fancy notations about it, but it's kind of it's a brown color, all right? Next thing, what I like to taste is that's on the tip of my tongue. Is I immediately get some sweetness, all right, because we've got a lot of corn. There's 2/3 corn and 1/3 rye in this whiskey. So I get a little sweet, like honey on a corn muffin starting off. I also get those classic barrel flavors, and all three of these whiskeys are going to have that classic barrel flavor, which is toffee, caramel, vanilla, chocolate. Those are all things from the barrel, and everybody will maybe taste some of them. Those are the standard things you taste. But when I taste the first part of this, I get the sweetness of the corn, okay? Then when I go to the back, that's where I pick up the rye at the end. I get spice. I get like pepper. You don't put pepper on a corn muffin, but you put a little pepper on all kinds of stuff, and that kind of lingers on the back. And then when you swallow that down, what happens is all those flavors merge, and it goes down smoothly in the back of your throat. And the reason it's so smooth is because of the water that we use in all these whiskeys. I like to say, like the evangelist said, our water comes from God, right? 3-syllable word, God, but it comes from the snows up in the mountains. It filtered down through miles and miles and miles of rock, and then it comes out of a tunnel on the side of a mountain in El Dorado Springs, Colorado, and they filter it just to screen out particles. They don't filter out any of the minerals or anything, and then that's what we use to make this whiskey. So if our water comes from God, it's going to be pretty good tasting whiskey, and that's part of why it's so smooth going down the back of your palate. All right. Now think about it, not picking on Louisiana, but think about if we were cutting this with swamp water, right? We made some really good whiskey, and then we cut it down with some Louisiana swamp water. It's not going to taste so good. There's more water in a bottle than there is whiskey if you're not going above barrel proof. So if we were using really good water, that's going to add to the smoothness of the whole process, and it's going to make it go down easier. All right. So that was our goal. Our goal wasn't to make a bad tasting whiskey or something that was harsh and you had to learn to get used to, or you take that first sip and you go, I'm not sure that's good. The other thing you can do to soften that up too is you can add a few drops of water or a few ice cubes in there. And that also lowers the alcohol level of the whiskey. So if you're not used to drinking higher level spirits, if you're a wine and a beer drinker, this is going to have more alcohol. Sometimes that takes getting used to. So if you want to add a few drops so that you can enjoy it, that's perfectly acceptable. That's one of the ways that we can drink it. Now, what we have on hand this afternoon, and it's hopefully afternoon where you're at, but we have a renowned mixologist, Mark Doust, and Mark is going to show you how to make a cocktail with TINCUP Original. So Mark, it's your ball in the end zone. Run with it.
All right. Thank you, Jess. That was a very appropriate send off, as I am a Packer fan, and it is going to be going into the end zone at the Super Bowl. Or so I hope. Well, thank you. My name is Mark. I've been bartending for, God, as long as I've been an adult, about 12 years. Ran a few cocktail programs. And obviously with the pandemic, my job is a little less meaningful at this point. So it's really nice to be able to give back and show some people how to make some cocktails that they can imbibe at home. TINCUP is an incredible whiskey. I've known about it for years. I've had it on the back bar of almost every bar that I've worked at. And I've always appreciated the flavor that comes out of it. I'm going to make, for the first cocktail, something called a Gold Rush. And something Jess said earlier, which I thought was really funny and a great way to describe this cocktail. This cocktail really notes the honey on a corn muffin, as Jess said it better than I did. This cocktail is just 3 ingredients. It's super easy, but these ingredients
looks like we're having some sound issues there with Mark. So Mark, we're going to pause on you. Jess, let's go right into the TINCUP Rye.
Okay, we're back rolling again. Shooting live is always different. If we could tape this, it would come out perfect, or we could make it appear that it was perfect. But you know, sometimes technical things giving it to you live and giving it right off the cuff. I mean, what could go wrong? I mean, we're drinking whiskey, and what could go wrong, officer? It seemed like a good idea at the time. So moving in, and we'll get back to Mark. He'll be back on, and we'll talk about his cocktails. And also during this whole process, think about any questions that you guys out there might have. I can BS about whiskey as long as anybody will listen to me, and Mark knows as much about whiskey as any mixologist out there. So moving rapidly along, right, is TINCUP Rye. Whole different animal, right? Go through the same process, or whatever process that you found works for you, so that you can sip it. If you want to start off with some water to knock it down, you can do that. If you're not used to it, if you like it straight like me, that's fine. So we're going to go through the whole arduous process of knowing what this whiskey is going to be. And immediately I get a lot more spice, right? Because we're rye. It's a difference between Wonder Bread, white bread, and rye bread, right? So we got different grains are going to give you a different experience. So now we're going to go for the another stiff. We'll go for the tip of the tongue. And so now I'm going, this is way different. We're not describing it yet, but this is way different than what we just tasted, right? If you got, now we'll put it toward the back and say, what does the back of your mouth say? And the back of my mouth says, that is spicy. That's like almost like a jalapeno, but then it ends up kind of being sweet for me. So what I get is I think about if you're ordering a kosher sandwich and you got rye bread up front, you're getting that kind of that little, not totally sweet, but it's sweet enough. You're getting a notice of that this is something a little bit different. And then I get at the back, I get the spiciness of the rye. It's like, it's really good. And then right as it goes down the back of my tongue, and this is the first time when we were experimenting and how we wanted to make this, I get apricots. Now, why citrus and spice go together and apricots, I don't know, but that's what I taste. So you can have any of those flavors in there. Once again, we're going to go back to the barrel at the beginning. You're going to have a little toffee, caramel, chocolate, vanilla. You're going to have that because it comes from the barrel. But then what you got with the rye is you're going to have a little bit upfront taste, not quite as sweet. You know, it's going to be spicier. And then at the back, it's definitely going to be spicy, right? So you're going to have some of that. So that's what I taste. And hopefully you're able to pick up some of that. And if you're out there and you got a notepad and you're making notes, you go, I think it tastes like this, or I think it tastes like that, then that's great because we're all different, right? We're all going to taste things different. So as long as you enjoy it and enjoy it responsibly, then we're happy that you're going to take part and sample this stuff. Now I'm wondering, do we have Mark back? Can Mark come back and play?
I'm here if you can hear me.
Yeah, I got you. Can you come back and play?
I absolutely can.
Okay. And folks, by the way, while Mark's doing this stuff, and he's going to make another cocktail for us out of the rye, if you got any questions at all about what he's doing or what we're doing, please, we're here for you. We're here to keep you entertained.
All right, are you ready for me?
Yeah, you're on, baby.
All right, I apologize. Had a couple technical difficulties, but I'm not entirely sure where I was cut off, but I'll give my spiel about the Gold Rush again. So this Gold Rush cocktail is a long-lasting classic that I think pairs perfectly with TINCUP whiskey. As Jess said earlier, it's the honey on the corn muffin, which sounds great for this cocktail. This cocktail is just 3 components. It's honey, lemon juice, and our wonderful original TINCUP American whiskey. Now, the honey that I'm using isn't just honey syrup. It's actually honey and water, 3 parts to 1 part honey to water. And the reason I do this is if you add this just honey to your cocktail tin and you try to shake it with ice, it's actually just going to solidify and it's going to stick to your cocktail glass. You're not going to get the sweetness. It's going to be a whole mess. So a little note to do at home. It's super simple. You can measure it, you can weigh it, or you can just eyeball it. I mean, that's what I did today. And then just give it a quick little shake or a quick stir and you're good to go. So I'm going to start with our smallest components first. When you're making a cocktail, you say I messed up the cocktail by pouring like 2 ounces of lemon juice in on accident. If I poured the TINCUP whiskey in first, I'd have to throw out, 2 ounces of whiskey or just, maybe make 2 extra cocktails for myself in my case. So you always start out with the smallest components first, and I'm going to start it with honey. We're going to do 3/4 of an ounce honey syrup. There we go. I got a local honey. I heard it helps with allergies. I'm not entirely sure if that's true or not, but why not give it a go? And then we have 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, fresh squeezed, is always the best. If you leave lemon juice in your fridge or open, it's going to oxidize, and it generally lasts 24 to 48 hours in its most vibrant state. It still works. It doesn't go bad. It's not going to kill you, but you're just going to lose the brightness in the cocktail that you want from a fresh ingredient. Next up is TINCUP American whiskey. Now, the cool thing about this whiskey is these cups. These little tin cups are so cool, and I didn't realize this until I was practicing earlier today. So this full cup right here all the way to the top is a full 2 ounces. So you don't even need to get a jigger like I have. You can use this. So I'm going to measure a full 2 ounces. TINCUP whiskey. Now, before I shake this and before I ice the tin and ice my cup, you got to prepare that garnish. You got to make it look good, right? So 1 lemon, take your peeler, give a nice sturdy peel. I have this. It's actually a pretty good peel. Sometimes I'll mess up and it'll be a little gross, but you can always trim it up. And I'm just going to do that right now just for aesthetics. So take my knife, and you can just cut a straight line all the way down so you have a straight edge, straight line down the other side. And then I like to cut at an angle. And this just, makes the cocktail look a little prettier. Why not? We've got the time, especially if you're making it for yourself at home. So right there, it's a perfect little lemon peel. I'm going to take my ice my tin, and you want to put a decent amount of ice in. If you lack on the ice, you're going to get more dilution without bringing it to the proper temperature. Shaking a cocktail is all about getting dilution, incorporating the ingredients, and aerating the cocktail. These 3 things are really going to it's going to elevate your cocktail experience. So my cocktail tin is iced up. Dump it in my bigger one. Give your best bartender impression. Now, when I'm shaking, the timing and everything, I go by feel, so I can hear it. That's something that you probably won't know on your first go around. But it's mainly about the temperature of the tin. When the tin is ice cold and you can barely touch it, that's when it's about ready. 15 seconds should really do for this type of cocktail. Always make sure you drain all the goodness in the one you're going to pour out. Then I'm going to ice my glass. All right. You don't have to fine strain it at home. I just like to get all the little ice pieces out so it's the cleanest, smoothest possible cocktail you can have. So we'll bring that up. Shake out all the ingredients. Tap it if you have a fine strainer because it looks cool and makes it seem professional. You take your lemon peel and you're actually just expressing the oils from the peel. It's all inside here. You're gonna express it over the cocktail so that when you bring it up to your nose, you're just getting another layer of flavor, of smell, aroma that really elevates the cocktail. You can rim the glass if you want, and then I like to just give it a little twist and put it inside. So here you have it. That's the Gold Rush with TINCUP American Whiskey. Thank you so much. Jess, back to you. Please explain the rye to us. Thank you. Oh, that's so good.
That looks fantastic. Yeah, Mark, we went through some of the rye before, and I think what I was telling the audience out there is mostly what I get out of rye is the spiciness, right? I get a little peppery, and I get a little citrus. I get a little fruit, which you just added a little citrus to that. And it's amazing how citrus balances a lot of times whiskey and gives an extra flavor to it. So going back we'll just do another quick taste because this is the fun part of doing this whole thing is now that we've been here before, I'm smelling this and I'm getting chocolate up front right now, but not as much. I'm getting maybe more caramel. Every day is different, right? Every taste is different. I go back through the front of the tongue, and I'm getting more oak out of this than somehow I get out of the TINCUP Original, because I think the corn is predominant, where this is a little softer grain despite its spice. So I think I get a little more of that, and then going to the back of the throat again. Again, I like that combination. Could be cinnamon. Maybe there's some cinnamon in there, but I like that combination of there is some spiciness, and then at the end, once again, my best descriptor is apricot. But that means that you're tasting the whole range of what a barrel can provide and what the grains from the bottle can provide as a flavor, right? So straight up, straight with ice, or we're going to head back to Mark now. I think he's probably had a chance to get rearranged and see what he wants to do with a rye whiskey and how he thinks that you guys should be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm all ready for you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jess, for that description. I'm sorry I missed the first read through of the rye, but rye is actually one of my favorites. I mean, I love standard American whiskey, but the rye just adds that extra spice, which is so interesting in cocktails, and it goes a little bit further on your palate. So I'm going to take the TINCUP Rye whiskey, and I believe this is 95% rye. So it really just kicks you in the face with that rye spice. I love it so much. Oh, it's wonderful. So I'm going to show you guys how to make a classic old fashioned, but with rye whiskey. That rye just lends a little extra flavor to the old fashioned. And the old fashioned is a wonderful cocktail because it's literally the perfect vehicle to showcase the flavors of a whiskey. There's only 2 ingredients or 3 ingredients. So the whiskey really shines through it. You know, it's the main star in this cocktail, and the sugar just helps give a little body to it, you know, give a little extra mouthfeel, kind of extend the flavors of the whiskey itself. And then we have bitters. So Angostura bitters is the most common steadfast bitters out there. And then they also have an orange bitters. I like adding both to my cocktail because it just helps the complexity of the whiskey, you know, just extends that vehicle. So the first thing I did, and I think it's on the slide, it's all about quality of ingredients. I don't like putting refined bleached white sugar in my cocktails because you can tell like there's an absence of flavor there. So I like using raw sugar. You can use like turbinado sugar. This is just an unbleached raw sugar. A sugar in the raw is probably the main one you guys see. So it's just this in its granule form. And the first step is to do about a half teaspoon, which is a perfect bar spoon if you have your bar spoon handy. Now, if you don't have the sugar, or maybe you're want a few in the evening, or you're catering to friends, I like to make a syrup out of it too. I did this just to show you guys, but I'm going to make it with just the sugar itself. This is 1-to-1. You don't have to boil the water. It needs to be hot because it just helps break down the sugar. And I also like measuring this, or weighing it, sorry, because if you do it by volume, sometimes the volume of the sugar isn't the same as the equal measurement of grams, like 1-to-1. So I measured that. So it's a perfectly 1-to-1 ratio simple syrup. And if you wanted to make, a dozen old fashions, you can batch that up and use the simple syrup rather than stirring 10 separately. It takes a while. This is an old fashioned. It's a very long, extended cocktail. So the first thing you do is add the sugar to the glass. And this is my handy little bitters dasher. If you're using the regular bottle, I'd say 2 dashes. This thing dashes a smaller amount, so I'm going to do 4. And if you really like Angostura bitters, you can dash away. But you want to soak the sugar. So I'm going to do 2 dashes, or 4 out of my little dasher, and then 2 dashes of orange bitters. These flavors work really well with the rye spice. I'm going to take the bottom of my bar spoon. You can use a muddler, you can use whatever you have handy, or you can just switch it around. It's just an effort to break down the sugar as much as possible. So I'm going to stir it, and you can start to see the granules break up and dissolve into the bitters. Then I also like to add just like 1 ice cube. Hopefully not on the floor. So this will also help dilute it a little bit at first and help break down some more of the sugar. And if you don't want to go through this process, you can just make a simple syrup. But kind of like the process of making the old fashioned, as much care as you put into the cocktail is all the flavor that you're going to get out of it. So my sugar is sufficiently starting the dissolving process. I'm going to take a full 2 ounces of TINCUP Rye Whiskey. Probably make a little more if this was for a cocktail at home. There we go. Now, just going to start moving that around a little bit, get that started. And I'll add my ice. There's an old saying with the old fashioned that it's called the old fashioned because by the time you're done with it, you're a year older. It's just a little bartender humor, I guess. This fun fact, though, this is actually the original cocktail. Cocktail doesn't actually just mean anything under the sun. It's not your Bahama Mamas, your Cosmopolitans. The definition of a cocktail is just spirit, sugar, water, bitters. And that's exactly what this cocktail is. So the old fashioned is really the original cocktail. And it's made that way, like I said, just to accentuate the flavors of the whiskey. So as I'm stirring this, my ice is melted a little bit. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. I want it to be a pretty cocktail. And it takes, about 30 seconds. Like it takes a good amount of time to really get the amount of dilution and melt on this that you want for a cocktail. And with this, if you're using raw sugar, it's almost inevitable that you're going to still have some sugar left at the bottom. That's kind of the fun part about the old fashioned. As you drink it, maybe the bottom gets a little bit sweeter and helps you just finish that cocktail a little faster so you can order another one. So this is sufficiently diluted and stirred, ready to go. Now, I didn't heed my own advice and cut my peels first, but I'm going to do that now. I like to do a lemon and an orange peel. Like I said before, just that aroma on the nose just elevates the cocktail and, delivers this fine rye whiskey into your senses. I'm going to cut it again to make it look pretty. At the angle. And my lemon as well. There we go. Now, for this, it's a little different. I don't like to rub the rim with the lemon because it's a little potent sometimes, and it may overtake this cocktail because it's very simple. So I express, do a little twist, throw that in there so it's nice and pretty. And the orange peel is a little milder in its flavor and aroma. So I'll put that on the rim. So sometimes when you put it out to your lips, you get a little of that sensation in those oils touching your lips. And then there you have it, the classic TINCUP Rye Old Fashioned. Thank you very much for listening. So excited to drink this. And I'll send it back to Jess so he can tell us about this 10-cup tenure, which I'm very excited to try. Back to you, Jess. Thank you.
That looked beautiful, Mark. That was, I want one right now. I don't have any ingredients here in front of me, so I'm going to be forced to just sip it straight, which is not a bad job after all. I mean, everybody's got to pick and choose their battles. So what Mark segued us into is we've got TINCUP 10. And I don't know, hopefully you've got some of that in front of you. This is kind of limited as to where we get around. We didn't lay that many barrels back when we were getting started. So we don't have as much of this as we do of our regular and our rye. But the 10 is just, it's going to have a different flavor profile. And how does that work? Well, let's give it, hopefully you got it in front of you. And if you're just forced to drink the regular along with this, you'll get a hint of what this is turned into with this. This is the same recipe, same proof. It's just this has more oak on it, right? It's been in a barrel for 10 years, and this is 4 to 5. We talked about color. Color's pretty close to the same, but your nose is going to be a little bit different, right? It's been in there. Okay, I get something, I get the same, but I get more. And I'll tell you what more means. More is not always better, but sometimes more of flavor is good. So that's what we want with our 10-year-old, right? I like that a lot. So tasting wise, the nose, it appears that this is softer. The barrel has taken more of the bad things out of the distillate and put more good things in. And one of the things that puts more things in is that caramel, toffee, vanilla. I get a lot of that right off the bat, and not as much sweetness. It's not that the sweetness is bad, but it's just not as sweet as honey on a corn muffin. It's sweet like some, I don't know, some kind of dessert or something that you're going to have after dinner, but an ice cream bar, it's sophisticated dessert. And then the second thing I get when I get to the back of the palate is the rye has softened. So you still get the spice. You still get that little bit of flavor profile, but it's softer on your palate. It doesn't shock the back of the palate. It makes it feel a little softer. And then I'm not getting near as much citrus as I got out of the rye, because the rye has softened up with the barrel. So what you're getting is, with the additional aging of the barrel, where the barrel takes stuff out of the whiskey and puts good stuff back in the whiskey, right? The interchange of the alcohol and the oak. What you're getting is like a softer, more subtle expression of what was coming out in this one. So we'll do one more to the back. So I get chocolatey tones and maybe almost cinnamon, because the cinnamon's a softer spice and pepper. And then, once again, down the palate, because of our water, that's going to soften up, and you're going to be able to enjoy that flavor that we put into the whiskey, rather than having to fight it and rather than to choke on it. So that's the tenure, and that's kind of the difference between them, or at least according to me. And and everybody has their different ways of tasting and what they taste. So I think it's good that you're here and you're here with us. Now, I'm not sure, like I said, this is live. Mark, do you have another cocktail for the 10-year-old, or how would you prepare that?
Well, I don't have another cocktail for the 10-year because
Okay.
I think I'm a purist like you, where the 10-year is so good on its own. I would just drink it on the rocks.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, we're trained professionals, so don't ever, well, try it at home, actually. You're better off trying it at home than you're out on the street. But if you don't want to take a whole bottle home and try it, visit your local pub, bar, tavern, restaurant, and try it a little bit. Start off neat, but add ice or water, however you do it. You want to try it to see what it is we're talking about if you don't have it in front of you. So it should be a pleasurable experience. If I'm doing my job right, you're going to enjoy it, right? And if you're going out, enjoy it responsibly. If you're home and your wife isn't yelling at you, then you can kind of have whatever you want. So that's kind of our whole deal about presenting this to the Outdoor Retailer Show. There's got to be some questions that you people out there have for either myself or for Mark. And, if we don't know the answer, we'll make it up. So.
All right, Jess, so
up.
we do have our first question. Our first question is, can I buy TINCUP in Canada?
I don't know. I think so, but I'm not sure the availability. I mean, we should be there. We're in every 50 states, and I know that we're in a couple of places, but I'm not selling out of the back of my truck again trying to make a living. So I don't actually know who's buying it. But if I guarantee you this, if you're from Canada and you go to a local store, and I'm not sure what the Canadian laws are, and you ask them, they will get it for you, right? They'll bring it in because they want to sell liquor, right? So if you say, could I have this, or could I have this bottle of wine from France, or could I have this micro distillery from New Zealand, they'll find it, they'll get it. If they can sell it to you, they'll get it for you.
Great. Okay, so here's another question. The next question is, what is the mash bill on the rye?
The rye is, we call it 100% rye, but it's actually about 95% because we use malted barley along with that. Barley has an enzyme in it that helps break down the sugars in all grains. So virtually every whiskey, whether it's rye, corn, wheat, will have a little bit of malt in there because the enzymes in the malt breaks down the sugar, and then we put yeast to the sugar. The yeast eats the sugar and it expels carbon dioxide and alcohol. So we want that malt to break down the sugars in all the grains. And that's, whiskey is grain. The legal definition of whiskey is distilled from a mash of grain and stored in oak casks or barrels. So that's
Great.
Pretty simple.
Yes, sir. Okay, this next question is actually going to be for Mark.
Yeah.
So Mark, in the Old Fashioned, how much simple syrup should she use, or should someone use if they didn't use the raw granulated sugar?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually didn't mention that. So it's going to be about the same. So if you do have a bar spoon at home, you can fill that up, and that's going to be in the bar world, we call it a scant quarter ounce. Scant, so it's just like below a quarter ounce. For me, a quarter ounce is a little too sweet. So if you have your jigger, which is right here, or actually I found this out today, the top of the TINCUP whiskey, this first line is a quarter ounce. So if you pour just underneath that, that's going to be the perfect amount for an old fashioned.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this next question is going to go back to Jess. Jess, how long have you been making TINCUP?
TINCUP, basically we started back in 2007. And we did it in conjunction with my friend in Indiana, at Lawrenceburg, Indiana. We'd been making Stranahan's, and Stranahan's was taking off like a skyrocket in Colorado. And then people started asking me, said, well, man, this is really good whiskey. It's American single malt. This is great, but I'm not always in the mood for single malt. I want American whiskey. And there's no A in American, right? So he's talking about American whiskey. What they wanted was a bourbon. Okay, they wanted something that tasted like a bourbon. And I said, well, we can do that, but we're going to put our little Colorado twist on it, which is that once we get our bourbon recipe, which is very complicated, 2/3 corn, 1/3 rye, and then we got a little malted barley, right? You always got to have that. 2/3 corn, 1/3 rye, which is old fashioned. Distill, age it, and then we ship it out to Colorado, and then we cut it with a little bit of Stranahan's. All right, we spice it. Okay, and what that does is that's part, along with water, is what makes it so suave going down the back of your throat. Right, that the malt whiskey softens that bourbon, and people go, well, you can't call that bourbon. And you go, no, we'll just call it American whiskey. We're from Colorado. We're not constrained by the rules of Kentucky or Tennessee. This is how Colorado. I mean, it's why we came up with the single malt, Colorado's first whiskey. You go, well, you're not, is that real whiskey? Isn't that Scotch? And we go, no, it's Colorado. So we've tried to create these whiskeys in our concept that we think are going to taste really good, and use all the best ingredients that we can to make it be something different than everybody else is doing. All right.
Awesome. So the next question refers to the TINCUP Original. They would like to know, how long has the TINCUP Original been aged?
It is aged 4 to 5 years. So very traditional bourbon or American whiskey aging is 4 to 5 years. And depending on what proof it goes into the cask or the barrel, is how fast it ages and matures, what part of the warehouse in. There's a whole lot of magic that nobody really understands. You can't do a scientific study on it. It just seems to work. But they've figured out that kind of the optimum time, unless you're going to do a special thing with the 10-year-old, the optimum time is 4 to 5 years. That's when the alcohol and the barrel get together and they impart things that are positive for both of them. The 10-year-old has to be, that can be aged in the top of the warehouse where it's hot, or it'll get woody. So that only certain barrels can be down where it's cool and it doesn't age as fast, where the heat doesn't affect it as much. So basically everything affects the flavor of whiskey, right? Grain, water, how it's aged, how long it's aged, and what to cut it with. So all those are all factors. And if you come up with a combination of those things that work together, then you come up with a good whiskey.
There's actually a couple more questions that came in regarding that description. The first one is, do you filter the whiskey through the charcoal before putting it in the barrels?
No. No. There is a company that does that. But we don't do that. We think that strips out too much flavor. Okay, so part of flavor is there are actually fatty acids in whiskey, and fat is flavor. So rather than filtering it before, we like to put it in the barrel and let the barrel do its magic. Now, barrels have the number 3 char, or known as the Alligator Char, which means it's burned pretty hard on the inside. Right? And so that's why it looks like an alligator skin. But what that does is that brings the sugars out to the surface of the barrel so it can interact with the alcohol. And it also, the charcoal that's on the inside helps do some of that filtration. So it's a very traditional way that's been doing it. We're trying to do it a little different, but we're not trying to reinvent the whole wheel.
Right, that makes sense. And then the next question regarding the process is how or why did you land on 84 proof for the original?
Tastes better.
That's a good point.
Because if you're going to drink it neat, that was some more hard work. And I was being a smart ass there, sorry. But we sat around and we go, what does this taste like? I mean, because our Stranahan's is 94 proof, and we thought that was good because it was softer. We sit around and we taste and we go, where do we think we want to be? And we thought we wanted to be at that point. And that's still, right in the middle, maybe upper level of a lot of the bourbons that are out there, even though we're American whiskey, but we just thought it tasted good like that.
Awesome. And we just got another question in. Is TINCUP planning to come out with a 15 or 18 year in the future?
That'll be hard to do. With bourbon and new barrels, it's very easy to over oak, spend too much time in a barrel. It has to be really coddled. It's not that experiments haven't been done, but aging for that long in a new charred barrel can add too much oak. It can get like chewing on an oak branch. The reason that there are older scotches than American whiskeys traditionally are that scotches use used barrels, okay? So the penetration of the whiskey into the oak has been done. Then it takes a little longer to get the same type of extraction from the barrel and the same extraction from the barrel as it does a new barrel. So think of a barrel as a tea bag, all right? If you got a tea bag and the first time you use it and you put it in really hot water and it'll sit there, and then, a couple of minutes, you've got a really good cup of tea. But let that tea bag dry out and let it sit for a year, and then put it in a cold glass of water. Think about how long that takes to get the color and the flavor out of that tea bag. So that's the difference in aging. And I'm not saying that either one is better than the other. There's so many great scotches out there, I don't have time to list them. But I'm saying it's a different process of how people do things. So I think for us, the fact that we got to 10 years with this one, I can't imagine going any farther with that. And it would be too over oaked. But never say never. Maybe we'll come up with refrigerated, where the new barrels are just, that would be really expensive, but where they're always cold, so it doesn't take as long. And what that would taste like, hell, I don't know.
All right. And one of the final questions is, how do you like to drink TINCUP?
I prefer it neat. I prefer to sip it neat. There are a lot of times at home where after dinner, if I'm going to have an after dinner one, I'll put ice. I'll put it on ice. And then when that ice is gone, I'm done. That's my allotment. So it kind of waters it down and lets me enjoy that experience for a while. I mean, I can nurse it with ice till it comes back to health. But that's how I generally approach it, and I enjoy it. And it's however you enjoy it most, what makes sense to you. I mean, if you want your steak rare, then you're not going to cook as long. And if you want your steak well done, you're going to cook it long. And if that's what you like, that's what you should like. Remember, enjoy it responsibly. Well, it's communications here. Mark and I are having the same problems.
Okay, and this is,
I'm back on.
There we go. This is actually the final question. It says, tell us a story of your first times using the still.
Oh, well, that was a ways back. That was back in 1972. And I moved to be a mountain man up into the mountains outside of Boulder, Colorado, a little town called Nederland, and I ran into a guy named Larry, the Missouri River Rat, and he knew I was from Missouri, so he decided that he would bequeath me his still. And I knew what a still was. I kind of knew what it was supposed to do, but I'd never done anything. He goes, well, I'm going to give it to you for a move back to Missouri, and it's easy. What we'll do is we'll boil up some corn, and we'll cook that, we'll add some yeast to it, and then we'll cook that off, and then everybody will be your friend, and they'll love you forever. And I went, well, okay, I'll give it a shot. I was pretty young back then. I was of drinking age, barely. And so we did that, and nobody died. And so that was my first successful distillation. So since that point, 48 years ago, I've gradually improved the process. You'd think over 48 years, you'd get a little better, sometimes you just step in it, right? So that's kind of where it all started. And I got different stills, moved up and made things, and that's where it came from.
Well, great. Okay, that's all the questions that I have for now. And so it's back to you.
Back to me?
Yes, sir.
I'm rolling. Okay, what else do I got to tell you? I've told you just about everything. I'll give you one last little hint about the bottle, okay? Couple of things about the bottle. One, Mark picked up, we do have a shot glass there. So if you want to put this in your saddlebag instead of a case of Budweiser, it's a lot easier to transport. And before we got hit with this newest pandemic, everybody could sit around and sip and share their whiskey together. Now I would heartily recommend using different vessels to do it and not just hitting it out of the bottle, but that was, hitting it out of the bottle is different than drinking it out of a cup. So we thought that was a good idea. The other thing is we came up with this octagonal shape because if you're out there camping and it's cold and you get a little cold in the middle of the night, this bottle's not going to roll down the hill from you, right? So it'll be close to you so you can get it. And then the last thing is we embossed the bottle, okay? We put raised lettering on it. And that wasn't the original idea. The original idea came back in the late 1880s when people would manufacture all kinds of bottles. So we're digging in an old mining town. I was in construction in a previous life. And behind the house is where they had the dump. They dig a big hole and they all had their own dumps. That's what they put. And we dug that up and we found a bottle in there that was blue before they perfected turning glass to clear. And it was a rectangular bottle, right? And it was a pint bottle. So on one side, it was embossed on three sides. And we found out that the reason they embossed it is because all the labels that they put on could be made with horseshoe glue, could be sweated off, and then somebody else would put their own label on your bottle. And bottles were really hard to get in Colorado because you had to ship them out by rail and you had to pack them. So they were the original recycled material. Everybody used them and saved them and didn't do anything with it. So we found out that this guy embossed his bottles so that his name would carry on. On one side, it was Dr. Sanford. So Dr. Sanford wanted to carry on his name. Then on the other side, he was from New York, right? So he was shipping stuff out from New York, made it all the way to Colorado. And then on the flat side, it said Liver Invigorator. So we know they were shipping booze out to Colorado back in the 1880s. And they did it embossing. So along with our honoring to the miners of TINCUP with our TINCUP and the whiskeys and the rye that they drank, and an honor to the old miners that embossed the bottles, that's how we came up with that design. And we thought it's tradition. So, and we're all about tradition. And I'm about out of stuff. I'm not out of whiskey, but I'm about out of stuff for you. So thank you for joining in. Appreciate you taking the time to listen.